Hello, everyone, and welcome to BowTieSecurityGuy After Dark. Today, my special guest is Ron Vanasdale. He's got a very interesting story of how he kind of transitioned into cybersecurity. Ron, tell us a little bit about your journey into cyber and what you're doing now.
Sure. So now, I just very recently took a job in cybersecurity. I might say I took the right job for me in cybersecurity. I do firewalls for one of the large theme park employers here in Central Florida.
Could be any one of them.
It literally could be any one of them, yes. Yes. I am here representing myself and not my employer, so that is why we will not mention my employer.
I think that's fair. So what you started off and you weren't in cyber originally. You were an electrician originally. What made you decide to transition into cyber?
I've always been very interested in computers and technology. I built my first computer before I even had a driver's license. I found a guy that had a computer shop in his house, and I would actually save money mowing lawns, and I rode my bike and I would buy computer parts when I could afford them until I was able to build my first computer that was somewhat reasonable for the time. It was a 386DX40. I love that machine.
That's top of the line back in the day.
Oh, it was great. It was great, yeah.
You can get some mean bulletin boards.
Yeah, it was a huge improvement from my very, very, very used 28612.
That's pretty fancy. Did it have the turbo button? That was always one of my favorites.
It did. It did have the turbo and 240 megabyte hard drives.
God, it's wild.
Yeah, insane. So I did a bunch of customer service jobs for a long time, just, not having any skills. You took what you could get, and I'm probably going to date myself here, but I found the electrical apprenticeship through a ad in the Sunday papers, because that's where they used to put the jobs. The older people in your audience will understand this. So I took a job as an electrician's apprentice. And then actually it was my wife who found the cybersecurity program first. And I was like, well, that sounds amazing. I'm going to do that. And my employer is incredibly generous with their tuition reimbursement program. And I started taking the classes, and I absolutely loved it. So I continued on with the program. They eventually had an articulation agreement with a college in Maine. So we're speaking of the Valencia College and their associate's degree in network engineering and cybersecurity. Excellent program if you're local or even not local. I might even say it's worth the out-of-state tuition. It's a great program.
I mean, that's the biggest thing. Is a lot of times with these programs, you have teachers who really aren't in the business and don't know cyber. Like, what was your experience with that with your teachers?
So, yeah, I had one or two professors that didn't really know what they were teaching. But then I had some others that were just absolutely amazing. Anybody who's gone through the cybersecurity program at Valencia College, if they don't have a great memory of Dr. Chisholm, then
anybody who has a doctor in front of their name.
Dr. C is the best. She really cares. She knows her stuff. I believe I know she absolutely probably could make more money, but she does it because she loves what she does. She's an amazing person and a really great teacher. I haven't spoken to her in years, and I'm.
Well, I mean,
made that much of an impression on me.
Well, I mean, that just shows the impact she made, right? And I think as a teacher, that's what you always want to do, is make some sort of lasting impact where years later, you're being brought up in a conversation. Like, do you think she really helped to ignite that passion that you have within cyber now?
She made it interesting. She was the reason I started doing my first capture the flag competition. she would just come up to you and say, "You're joining the cybersecurity team, and you're going to do a capture the flag competition." I'm like, okay.
So you were kind of voluntold that you're doing a CTF?
I was, yeah. And then I did it, and I was like, oh, when's the next one? This was absolutely amazing. I did terrible on it. But it was so much fun that I was like, okay, when are we doing it again?
Well, the most important thing about a capture the flag is not even winning or being great at it. It's learning to teach your mind to think differently, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest skills a cybersecurity professional can learn. Like, you're very, very new in your career. You've only been in the role, like an actual official cyber role, for a few months. But I really think the experience you get from a CTF and just doing those events and learning to think outside the box and challenge the way that you normally think is invaluable. And it is very much a skill. I know people who do CTFs all the time. They're exceptional at it because their mind has been trained to think completely different from anybody else. Like, you know, they'll see a number sequence and they'll be like, oh, okay, that's an episode for an episode of Friends. And it's 6 hours and 3 minutes into this. And it's like, wait, what? How did you get this? Like, look, I've done this before, right?
And I think that's the thing that I was missing. As I developed my career, I went from an electrician's apprentice to a technician that worked on the electronics for the rides, and great job. I then, 10, 12 years ago, started doing IT work. And IT is wonderful, but it just doesn't have that extra something that cybersecurity did, you know? I felt like I was doing important work, but when the opportunity came and the right role came around to leave a really great IT role, I couldn't say no.
I think that's the big key, is that when people look at cyber, they're like, oh, it's just kind of an IT type role, but it's so different in the fact that you take it a lot more personal. Like, I never really cared about like somebody's machine that wasn't being functional or doing what it was, or the fact that they couldn't connect to VPN. But like, you tell me that their VPN's being impacted by a DDoS, I'm all of a sudden all in, right?
Now I'm intrigued. Yeah. Oh, your Outlook isn't working? Well,
yeah, I mean, that's a bummer.
And I think it goes along with what I noticed I was reading and the podcast I was listening to. I wasn't reading a lot of how to fix Outlook websites, if there is such. I'm sure there is. There's got to be one, right?
There has to be. I mean, it's probably a GeoCities website with like a little guy digging stuff that says under construction.
But I would find that while I'm doing IT work, I'm reading blogs about cybersecurity. I'm listening to cybersecurity podcasts. I'm not listening to blogs and reading websites about how to fix problems with your server or your machine. I would look those up on Google, get the answer, and then go back to listening to the security podcast I was listening to while I fixed your machine.
I feel like that's one of the biggest things in IT work, is like, how good are you at Googling? I will say cyber has a lot of Google aspects too, where things get real weird, and especially from a networking perspective, you can kind of get a lot of the like, why is X happening and things, but I think there's a nuance to it, which AI has still had a hard time kind of pinning down, that human thought process. That's when you look at something, you kind of bend the lens in a weird way and go, this just doesn't seem right. Like when I did incident response for another theme park, Disney, like it was interesting because when you would dig into something, you would be staring at just like a wall of text in a PCAP file, right? For anyone who doesn't know, PCAP's just like the capture of the network data that's going over the line at that time. And you get so used to seeing certain things and you go, hang on, that's slightly different. Why is that different? Do you think like your innate curiosity kind of drove you to the field and kind of made you keep kind of coming back to cyber as that kind of passion? I feel like that's required for the job. You have to be kind of a person who's never sated and always is chasing that curiosity streak.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, like I said, even when I was doing other things IT related, I was still always reading, cybersecurity blogs. I was always listening to cybersecurity podcasts. I wasn't listening to, the Windows Server guys podcast.
That would be rough.
Yeah. I was listening to,
Darknet Diaries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Those are some of my favorite. You kind of hear that, and I feel like a lot of what we do from a cyber perspective is glamorized by TV and movies. What is the first thing that's kind of taken aback? Like, now that you're in an official cyber role, you're focusing on firewalls, firewall rules, and things like that. What's the first thing that you're like, oh, wow, this is that, or this is totally different than what I thought it would be?
So far, firewalls have been largely what I expected because I had a lot of network experience. So I had several years of working with Cisco, and Cisco kind of made sense to me because I was very comfortable with the command line, because my computer experience goes all the way back to the DOS days, even before that. So DOS wasn't an unfamiliar thing to me, and I'm like, oh, it's command line, cool. I like command line because then you can script it. Also I can, even if there's an interface you can't script it, which really largely you can just about script anything. At the very least, I can save it and then just copy paste it. Yeah. I don't have to sit there and click 1,000 things. I can just, there's the script, do it.
Yeah, once you've done it once, you can kind of figure out how to write the script for it. It saves so much time.
Yeah, so that was, firewalls have been largely what I expect them to be. Maybe the speed at which some of the management interfaces have surprised me. I kind of expected things to
move a lot peppier.
Be a lot faster, and because some Cisco switches can take a really long time to boot up, but boy, they've got nothing on a particular brand of firewall, and they're at their lower end to boot up.
No, I know the brand. We will not alienate any possible future sponsors, but I agree with you. Like,
their data plane is wonderful. The management plane on some of their lower end models has something to be desired.
Well, it's fascinating because I think people just get used to that speed, and when you come out of an environment like that into like a more modernized firewall, like say an F5 or something, the speed that like an F5 runs is just drastically different in comparison, and even some of their older systems. But one of the things that you kind of mentioned is the fact that you were always kind of researching, you were always kind of growing your skills. How many years, when did you start kind of looking to get into cyber, and then how many years did it take you to actually land your first gig?
So I started doing IT work professionally, I'd say it was about a little over 10, 11 years ago, I think is about the time I'm looking at there.
Yeah.
And it was kind of immediate. Like, enterprise IT was wildly different than what I expected it to be. I was a hobbyist who had a few classes under my belt, who then started working in enterprise level IT, and it was so much different than I thought it was. And I think this is what kind of led into the cybersecurity, is I found myself really interested in the network because the networking was so completely different. Like, Windows looks the same.
Yeah.
Whether it's on the computer that I bought or the computer that the company bought. But the networking was so much more interesting. There was so much more to learn there. So I found myself, probably irritating our network engineer a lot. and starting to take the Cisco classes was really very interesting. And I had that great resource of that network engineer who I would say, hey, I learned this in school. And he's like, all right, that's cute, but that's not how we do it. This is how we do it in the real world. This is the answer your professor wants.
This is how we actually
do it. And let me explain to you why. And to have somebody who was willing to take that time and explain to me, not just go away, you're bothering me.
Yeah.
But that was instrumental. I think that fed my curiosity into networking and like I said, just having it be so much different. Like you're like, oh, it's a network like my house. Well, yeah, it's kind of like your house, just on a scale that you've never seen before.
A lot more complex.
And no, it's not it's definitely not a flat network. Well, why is it not a flat network? Well, because everything would collapse and nothing would ever talk.
It wouldn't be able to function.
Yeah. So that was very eye-opening. And the more I learned about it, the more I just wanted to learn about networking. So, keeping that connection with people I knew within the company that did cybersecurity and when this firewall role came up and I had friends reach out and say, hey, there's a job we think you'd really be good at. And I was like, this is 100% in my wheelhouse.
And I think that's the key, is that networking aspect is super important. But also, one of the biggest things I kind of teach my mentees is like, don't be afraid to be foolish, right? If you don't know something, don't be afraid to say you don't know it. Like, especially like you said you kind of went to the networking guy. You're like, hey, look what I learned. And they took you under their wing. I think that's so important. Like, if you have a job, even for me, like the way I got my job at Disney in cyber was I kept kind of being that squeaky wheel and going, hey, we should do this differently. Hey, we should do this differently. And then they kept kind of saying, hey, stay in your lane. You're not a security guy. And then finally I had an opportunity and they said, there's this role opening up for IoT security. We think you should apply.
Yeah.
And I reached out to the hiring manager. I didn't even know what the acronym meant, right? And then, fast forward 6 months later, I'm in front of a conference of 1,000 people telling them how to secure the cruise lines and how to do stuff. So, I mean, it really comes down to that innate curiosity, and then also in kind of almost being fearless in many cases to know that, like, yeah, I don't know everything, and that's okay. What's some advice you have for kind of new people going into cyber? Like, if someone reached out to you today, what would you do to kind of help guide them?
So I have a little bit of experience with this. Part of my role in the IT position was to interview people. Like, I sat on the technical panel when we interviewed new, interview candidates. And I've done quite a bit of interviewing. They actually threw me right in and I helped interview somebody for another firewall position. I'm like, I've only been here like 2 weeks, right? They're like, no, you're fine. Come on,
you're
just
good.
Join the call.
Yeah.
You know enough to help us with this. And mostly I just sat there quiet. But I have done lots of interviews. I've talked to a lot of people over the years, sometimes maybe too much. Both advocating for Valencia's program and the University of Maine's program by extension, because they have that articulation agreement.
Yeah.
Even going back and mentoring some of the cybersecurity club, students. And the one thing I will say that comes off right away is whether or not this is something that you just read in a textbook or you have a genuine interest in it. It's painfully obvious when somebody has just nothing but book smarts, no experience. You can not only just tell by the way they answer a question and that they have no familiarity with the hands-on aspect, but also sometimes the way they talk, just the way they talk about it, how excited they get when they tell you about their home lab.
Yep.
Oh, I've never touched those firewalls, but I got this home lab and I got this PF-Sense firewall and I got this and I put it on this hardware and I'm like, this is amazing.
That's huge, right?
It is huge.
I'm like, when you're on an interview, just be passionate about something. Like, and if I can get somebody who's really excited, I know that I can teach them. Like, I always say that I can't teach you not to be a jerk, but I can teach you technical.
Yeah.
So, like, if you got a good personality and you have that innate curiosity, and I've got a role that has flexibility where you can grow in, that I don't need somebody kind of top of the line right now, man, those are the best people. Because like, if you're sitting at home, like you said, building a home lab, playing with a home lab. I remember when I was going through the IoT interview, I was talking with the red team, and the red team was asking me like, hey, you went for the mobile, this is a mobile IoT security role. What do you have experience in? So I was like, oh, I've been hacking Android. I started to do this. I learned how to do that. And like, I started going through all these things, and they're like, oh man, that's really cool. And like, I was like, yeah, let me show you. And I totally nerded out. And they're like, no, send me your code, right? And it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, I answered that correctly just by getting really excited. And it was funny because at a certain point, I mean, they were peppering me and hitting me so hard with technical. And I still to this day say it was one of my most technical interviews. And at a certain point I go, do I need to know this? And they're like, nah, we were just waiting to see how you would answer when you didn't know. I think that's the biggest thing. And people who don't know and don't have that passion answer a very specific way by faking it. And they go, oh, well, I've used that before, but it's been a while. It's like, come on. Don't put it on your resume if you don't know how to talk to it. Just because you installed a firewall one time 6 years ago doesn't mean it should be in your proficiencies.
And yeah, that's...
Well, the biggest thing, too, is going through the interviews recently, like the basic technical skills seem to no longer being taught in school. I think they really focus on giving you the tools to pass and get your certs and whatever may come with the degree. And then you lose out, if you don't do it on your own, some of that technical and some of that deep technical stuff that I think you need.
When you talk to somebody, and like I said, a lot of my experience for interviewing comes from the IT side, not necessarily the cybersecurity side, but when you talk to somebody and they're telling you, and you're asking them a basic question, you've got a service that's not able to respond. What are some steps you might take to troubleshoot? And they can't come up with a single thing to troubleshoot a down server or anything like that, or a service. But yet they talked very technically about another subject. You're like, you've read about this. It's clear that you've done some book learning, but you've never actually taken the time to try it on your own.
Yeah.
When you can't answer like the most basic of technical, it also shows that maybe you haven't done any troubleshooting, which you would definitely have done if you've ever tried to set up a home lab. If you've ever gone, hey, what happens if I heard this crazy thing where I can have 2 routers and segment off my network using 2 cheap routers instead of 1 crazy expensive one? What would that look like?
Yeah.
I
think a lot of the technical aspect of cyber is breaking stuff, right? Like, you really just kind of have to keep poking and prodding at it and going, what would happen if? Like, I purposely built a system that had vulnerabilities, that was flawed, and I put it on the internet just to see what would happen. And it was compromised in about 2.5 hours. I was like, that's crazy to me. And that was one of the things.
My first question to you would be, well, okay, obviously, but how was it compromised?
Right, well,
how did they get in?
Yeah, because I left.
What did they exploit to get in?
Right.
What did they do when they got in there? What were your IOCs on that?
Yeah, well, as soon as they got in, the first thing they did was check to see if they had lateral movement. And I had segmented it so they couldn't get further, so they were just in a box. But they came in and they checked the system for vulnerabilities, and then they instantly logged in and they looked to see what systems were connected to it, to see whether or not it was a honeypot or something, is my guess. And then once they did that, they started looking for mail servers, they started looking for data, and then they actually started running an encryption malware to start encrypting my drive, basically in ransomware. It was really kind of fascinating to watch, but it showed how quickly it happens, and it shows how no one really targets anyone. It's kind of a situation where they're just running all the time, these bots. And
Yeah.
at some point, your system comes online and it's exposed at that moment. And
You have to be within my range. I'm scanning at
right,
that moment.
at a vulnerability, you got vulnerabilities. That was one of the things that kind of really blew my mind when I first got into security at Disney, is being introduced to Kali Linux and going, wait, what? Like, literally anyone can hack?
Yeah.
Like, you don't... So let me get this straight. This Metasploit tool, like, builds the hacking packages for you, and then you just run a command and point it at something? I was like, this is like... If 15-year-old Rob had this, I'd be in jail. Because it's like giving me a loaded gun. Like, it was crazy to me. I was so floored by that. And then the more I dug into the Kali and the more tools that it had for completely free, I'm like, well, no wonder hacking has become so bad. We've lowered the bar.
I had a very similar experience with Kali. Kali? I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's Kali Linux, but it could be Kali Linux.
I don't know. I had largely the same
There's
experience.
some Linux guy listening to it going, Kali,
You're both
idiots.
wrong.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe it's GIF instead of GIF. If you say it's GIF, you're not friends with me. I'm sorry. Like, I don't care if I'm still convinced that the owner or the creator of the GIF format, graphic interface format, is trolling everyone, saying it's pronounced GIF.
He's still laughing about it.
I would hope so.
But I had largely the same experience when I saw Kali. I was like, wow, like they just put all these tools together to use, because I was introduced to it when I was being shown how to do CTF competitions.
Yeah.
And so later I'm of course I'm playing with it, I've got a vuln box and I'm scrolling, I'm attacking the vuln box with it, within my own network. And and I'm going through, and at the time I was working with the utility people at this theme park that I work at. And as I'm going through and I'm seeing SCADA devices in there, and like the first thing I did when I went to work, like I'm not a security guy, and my role at that time was not a cybersecurity person, just an IT guy. But I felt obligated to go in there and tell them, did you guys know this existed? Yeah. Look at this. Yeah. Do we have these, and are we patched for these things?
Yeah. I can't tell you how many people, when I worked for Disney, like we would get an alert for traffic on the network, somebody running Nmap or someone running a scan, and I'd be like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, I just found this Kali thing and I thought it was cool. And I was like, so you decided to run it against all the subnets at Disney? Like, what are you doing? Since then, it's gotten, we created a lot of safeguards to ensure that wouldn't happen. But it was interesting in the beginning because a lot of this was still very new, right? A lot of, even cybersecurity is still a very fledgling kind of, if you look at the overall scope of technology, cybersecurity has really only truly been around and really started to be invested in from a college or program perspective for only a decade or so. I mean, it's not there that long. I always tell people, like, if you're interviewing with someone who's over 40, they didn't even have the option for a cyber class because they didn't exist.
When I built my first computer, I didn't even have really the internet to rely on. I mean,
well, that's right. We couldn't look anything up. We just figured out stuff by breaking things.
The number of times I had to reinstall DOS because I broke it doing something. But I learned, well, I don't do that again. And then when I finally got access to some resource, or I found a book, or I was at the library and I was able to go, why did I break it?
Yeah,
what happened?
Or you found that one expert who knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually the next time I'm going to see my computer guy, I'd be like, hey, I want to buy a case this month. Okay, cool. Hey, I did this. Why'd you do that? I don't know. I wanted to see what would happen.
Yeah.
He's like, it broke, didn't it? I'm like, oh yeah, it broke really bad. Okay, here's why it broke.
I think I think you're onto something there, because I feel like that instant availability of knowledge is removing the ability for people needing to learn it, right? Especially with things like ChatGPT, which I absolutely love, kind of the AI aspect. because it does make things easier. But now I'm, thinking about it, I'm concerned, right? Like maybe that's because we had to kind of rest on our own laurels, so to speak. Like if we couldn't fix it, that was it. That we didn't even have a geek squad or any of that stuff. It was like you figured it out or you didn't have a computer.
Yeah. Well, that'd be the worst thing ever.
It was.
I needed my computer.
Well, especially at the time, like, in the 90s, I was on bulletin boards and running messenger groups and different hacker groups as a young kid. And it would have been the end of the world for me. It's like, oh my God, that'd be terrible.
The thing I miss most about bulletin boards is I knew the people on the bulletin boards. Sometimes, especially if you had a local bulletin board, like a local number bulletin board, those were all people that were in your area, in your neighborhood even.
True.
And like I met real life friends on bulletin boards. And, if there's only 5 lines on that bulletin board and they're all local numbers, like, oh, hey, my buddy's on.
And then Merck finally came out and Microsoft Internet Relay Chat like changed the world. Like you got access to like the world. Right? Yeah. You could connect with people everywhere. Same with America Online. I would say America Online was a big staple of my childhood too, just because I spent so much time on there, like social engineering. Before social engineering was a thing, trying to convince the admins and the TOS people to give me an admin account. I am one of the reasons that America Online added the little thing that said a TOS representative will never ask you for your username and password or information, because that didn't exist when I was hacking. Most of that stuff was just kind of like there were no rules. Hell, there were no laws. The Computer Abuse Act didn't really get enacted and start to get applied until Mitnick. It was made an example of, and then all of us hackers at that time, 14-year-old Rob was like, oh God, you can go to real jail. I don't want to go to real jail. It's terrible.
I had a very similar experience at my high school where we had, I believe it was Novell NetWare. Mm-hmm. You had to have access to a specific directory, a login directory. And to get onto the network, you had to be in that you had to have access to that directory. Well, they messed up. They gave everybody access control to that directory. So me and a friend of mine found some documentation.
It's over 7 years. Around. You can speak clearly.
Okay.
Statute of limitations, man. Learn it, love it.
It was high school, long time ago.
Exactly.
I'm
You're
old. Good. We figured out how to change the permissions on that and locked most of the school out of their network.
Oh yeah.
And didn't really get in a lot of trouble for it. I believe partially because we owned it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was totally us.
Yep.
We didn't mean to do that. We were kind of playing with the system. Well, why were you doing that? Because it was there. Because I wanted to know how it worked. I wasn't intending to do any harm. I just wanted to know how it worked. I needed to know how it worked.
Yeah, that obsession.
And we fixed it. We avoided any real trouble. My parents were very upset when they got the phone call. And next year there was a rule at my high school about hacking.
Oh, I remember the first time I was investigated, we dropped an entire network switch for like all of Orlando for AOL. Because we had taken over an administrator account and we were using it to boot people offline we didn't like. So we were basically DDoSing them effectively with an ISDN connection, which was, blow your mind at those speeds there, buddy.
I thought I was the absolute just cat's meow when I had a cable modem and it was upstream telephone modem, downstream cable.
Yes.
And now I don't know that I would even move anywhere that didn't have fiber.
Yeah, it's like a prerequisite, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, wait, you can't do a gigabit? Get out of here. Stop talking to me.
Talk about it. Like, no.
Get out of here with your garbage connection. Yeah, and what we used to deal with was like the greatest thing. Like it would take, to download a song off of Napster would literally take hours. To download a game would take days. It's like... And that's where we've come from. But I find it interesting, right? Because I think you've touched on a lot of things that are really important. We've got a few minutes here, so I'll wrap it up. But like, it really comes down to that innate curiosity, I think, is what drives all of us. And when we talk to people, especially me as a mentor who really opens himself to anyone who wants mentoring, I can tell immediately if their heart's not in it.
Yeah.
You can tell they're just doing it because they hear that they can make a lot of money. And
I've already had that. I've had, I post on LinkedIn. I got my first cybersecurity job, and
you thanked me for that, by the way, which I thought was really cool.
Well, I mean, while we haven't necessarily set up and talked about you being a mentor and me being a mentee,
it's just kind of
I have absolutely benefited from your advice.
Yeah,
so
I thought it was so cool.
While like I said, we've never set up this kind of informal relationship. I listen to you when you talk.
Yeah.
And I have applied some of your advice. Some of your advice came in clutch when I interviewed for my recent position. I even told you about it and thanked you for it.
I thought that was so cool. And it's so funny because I didn't even see it for weeks because I have all alerting turned off. So I was searching for BowTieSecurityGuy just to see who stole my content this week. And I saw that you had mentioned me and I was like, oh, how cool is that? But I think that's the biggest thing is you don't know how you're going to influence people. If you're in a cyber position, if you can just help out and just listen and just talk to that person, that time can be invaluable. The lessons they can learn, the information that they can glean could be the difference of that job or not, right? And you never know where that piece of advice may come in. I always have people who are like, oh, well, I'm new to cyber. Why would I mentor? It's like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
There's just because you know it and you don't think you have a lot to give doesn't mean that person's not going to glean a lot of that knowledge.
Having been an apprentice many years ago and having a formalized apprentice and journeyman relationship, I believe taught me so much about what it means to, have somebody who's already there kind of shortcut your learning to give you some distilled wisdom. And that can be invaluable. And just because you might not have a ton of experience doesn't mean that you don't have something that you can offer somebody with a little less experience. And I've had several people reach out and go, oh, I want to get into cybersecurity too. Or, hey, I just finished my cybersecurity degree. And the main thing I can take from that is, cool, that's great. Here's some networking stuff. And here's some networking event that's going to happen in our area. You should attend and meet some people. Yep. And also, have you joined, have you gone to B-Sides? What's B-Sides? Have you considered joining ISC Squared?
What is that?
And I go,
it's like, did you even Google the base? There's so many people who just want it handed to them. And you can tell that difference again, like the people who want it. But no, man, I truly appreciate your time. And always a blast to kind of chat with you. I figured this is more of an informal setting. We normally play D&D on Mondays. So I figured since we had some time waiting for pizza, we would record an episode. So if the audio quality is not as good as people are used to, that's okay.
We'll blame our sound engineer.
Exactly. And that sound engineer is Samsung. Thank you again. And everyone listening, good luck out there.